you're going to die, or you're going to retire, or you're going to get divorced, or you're going to want to go live near your kids, or whatever it is, there's going to be some exit for you. And so if you start now in the early stages where you're getting started, if you can just practice that discipline of documenting your operations and making sure that you have clear job descriptions for everybody, that you understand these different facets of your business and how they run, and you've got that well documented, small improvements over time are compounding. And so just start now.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Own the Exit. I'm here with my co-host, Aaron. What's up, Aaron? How are you?
What's going on, Caleb? I'm doing well. Excited for another episode.
Yeah. We've got Joshua Monge with us today. Joshua is a fractional COO. He specializes in operational systems, building and defining SOPs and operational protocols for businesses, specializing right now and focused right now in businesses with $500,000 in revenue all the way up to $5 million in revenue, helping them to scale their operations and define their operations so that they can own their exit, build a company with the end in mind. And that's what this show's all about. I was really excited that we got to have Joshua on the show. So Joshua, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much. This is so cool.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping on.
So tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, how'd you get started in this kind of fractional COO world?
Yeah. So,
and maybe even tell our listeners, if they don't know, what is a fractional COO?
Yeah, so let's start there. So fractional COO basically is, to cut to the quick, it's the number two in the organization. So you've got the CEO with the vision and the ideas, and then the number two person should help take those visions and help execute, manage day-to-day, get structure, and really help the organization run efficiently and hitting all the targets and goals that everyone agreed to. For how I got here, that's a long story, but the short story is, or the shortest milestone I can go back to is, I used to be the director of economic development for a local chamber. I did that for 3 years. I helped hundreds of businesses stay and grow in the area. I was very focused on business retention and expansion. And so I saw a lot of businesses succeed. I saw them fail. And the one thing that really stuck with me was the businesses that fail from success, where basically things are working and they're going really well for them, but it's getting complex and they didn't get things prepped in place for complexity. And so that was kind of one of those big takeaways from that time that I did that. Because I even had an owner of one of the largest food manufacturer facilities in the area crying in my office because they were trying to figure out how to get the business to their kids, and there's multiple kids, and it was this big ugly mess. And I just remember sitting there going wow, you're one of the most influential people in the area, and you're sitting in my office crying because you can't figure this out. That was real. So anyway, that stuck with me. So then I left the chamber in February of 2020. Great time to do a career transition, by the way, because I was supposed to walk into a COO position for a manufacturing facility, 10 million in revenue, 40 employees. And the money people that were bringing me in were like, hey, listen, we're really interested in you. I think you can do great work, but there's this COVID thing happening. So we're going to put this on hold. And when COVID blows over, we'll give you a call. I didn't get the job because they never called me back. So
yeah.
So then I was like, great, I got to bring something to market quick. So I started my own business. I saw everybody going online. And I used to have a digital marketing agency. I built an SEO business. I saw people needed help with that. So I focused on audits. I didn't want to get into the whole digital agency thing. And I kept one product and I kept it really simple. I got that to 6 figures in 18 months. And a buddy of mine that was a fractional CFO for a regional accounting firm was like, listen, between the work that you did with the chamber, walking into that COO job, and what you did with your own business, you should help people again. I was like, oh man, I'd love to, but I don't want to go back to nonprofit work. And he's like, dude, you should be a fractional COO. And I was like, what's that? And then when he explained it to me and I saw how he did it for organizations as a CFO, I was like, oh, I could totally do this. And so in 2021, I switched over. I still had kept the SEO business on the side, but then my main focus was building the fractional COO practice. So that's how I got there. I didn't plan it. I didn't know it was going to happen. It was just circumstances that as I had to rise to the occasion, it led me down this path.
You just almost fell into it, which I think sometimes those are the best stories and those are the best outcomes, because when you sort of I fall into it, maybe is the wrong way to say it, but it's almost like there's this gravitational pull toward the thing that you're truly great at and supposed to do and just makes sense. And sometimes it as someone who thinks like an entrepreneur, you're looking for the thing rather than just kind of surrendering to that magnetic pull. And it kind of seems like that's what happened for you. You were trying to figure out, the best way to build and scale a business and around what product and around what offering and that kind of thing. And you had some skills that you'd cultivated, but at the end of the day, the identity of Joshua was, I really am skilled and passionate about helping businesses learn how to build systems and infrastructure that support scale. And
I thank you. Oh my gosh. I mean, even my friend that referred me to this, it was the same thing. He recognized something that I enjoyed and that I was passionate for. And I think, kind of leveraging what you're saying here is my first go-to though was going back to a hard skill that I knew I could use to gain cash. But then because I wasn't doing it just as freelancing, I was trying to build a business. Now all of a sudden, I was going to be in the same place in a few years as all this complexity and everything else. So, but yeah, no, I'm glad. I know they always say like, oh, work in your passion or work where you are. Like it, yes, and understand the market and what products you can deliver. Then living in that, oh my gosh, it's pretty awesome.
You made a comment about the food manufacturer who, like, it sounds like he had a lot of revenue, had a lot of, money coming in and everything, right? But hadn't set up some of these things in place to, like, whether it was transfer the business or it was just a mess, right? Where you would think, hey, you got a lot of money, things are good. Doesn't sound like they were good though, without having these systems and things in place. So I'd love for you to speak into that. What are some of the challenges? Like, what could he have done earlier, right? At a smaller, when he was first starting up, operational bottlenecks, things like that, before he began to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, I've been chewing on that one for a while. It's like, what could he have done? Because this business originally started out of the back of his car. Like, it was a hobby project. He was, I can't really tell you the product because based on the market, like people know exactly who it is and there's an NDA there, but he had a product that it was a product that he was supplying to other food manufacturers. And then he was also selling it to direct to consumers out of the side of his car, like out of the back of his car. So like, he just did it as a passion project.
Yeah.
Well, eventually people asked for more and more of it. And so then he started, bought like one location, started a production, and they just kind of slowly scaled. So this guy literally built this business for the last, I think 40 years of their lives, almost 45.
Wow.
And so everything they did, it was just solving that next problem that was in front of them. And because they were really good at solving problems, they just kept buying the next thing and then expanding, And so now all of a sudden they get to the age where they're ready to retire. All the property's still in their name. Some of the property's in the company name. Some of the company assets are like in a trust, and like it's just this like hodgepodge of like Frankenstein decisions that, made over 45 years. So then the biggest problem was when they tried to pass it over to the kids, it was an inheritance tax. I mean, this thing is, they've got a few locations. I mean, they've got a couple hundred employees working for them. This is not a mom and pop, like little shop they're trying to pass on. This is a huge debt burden. This is a huge financial burden, and so for them, even trying to transfer it, one, they were worried about estate tax. Second, they couldn't even get the purchasing price from this kid, from the children. But these are adult children, by the way. So trying to pass it on to the next generation and say, hey, listen, I need to sell it to you for X because I want my retirement set up and I want to be good. That wasn't there. And then the other piece was, and this was expressed by the owner when he was having the conversation with his kids. Hey, I'm going to give you guys this, but you can't afford it. So then what I'll do is I'll give you a really good deal, but I still want to be in charge. I still want to make choices. And it's like, the kids are like, well, we're not going to pay all this money for this job that basically we're still going to be obligated to you. And then you're still going to make all the decisions. So it was, all of that was just a big mess. So what I would say to go back and do again is start building the business more intentionally. So if he could have gone back maybe like 15 years ago and got documentation in place, start shifting all the assets over, maybe put it into a trust, have the trust, get that set up, put all the assets in business, everything in there, and then start training the kids to take over and then how these different assets and components run and get that figured out. But yeah, it was very complex, and to fix it, it's just a heavy amount of cash. And so it was, I don't know. It's like, how do you fix an iceberg? That's
Yeah.
that's already floating down the river. It's a little hard to figure out exactly at which point, but I think maybe 15 years ago they could have done some really nice structuring stuff that would have been harder cost and harder structure, but could have set them up for more success.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about you said something earlier that triggered this thought in me that I've had many times, that simplicity naturally scales into complexity, and complexity naturally scales into impossible, or
I
into
heard chaos for some people.
chaos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Simplicity scales into complexity, complexity scales into chaos. And so the goal, I would imagine, and the value that you're bringing to businesses in that $500,000 to $5 million revenue range is helping them to take whatever they have and bring it down to the lowest common denominator, get it as simplified as possible, because as they begin to scale beyond that, even as simple as possible will grow into various complexities.
Oh yeah.
Right. So where do you start? I mean, can you walk us through your process of how you kind of identify and then maybe even implement scalable systems into a business that don't cause it to kind of grow into chaos?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is I have a really clear sense of who my ICP or ideal client profile is. So I can only help people that want help.
Mm.
So that's the first step, is qualifying the owner to say, hey, I know this thing's crazy and everything else. Like, are you ready for help? And, some people are like, no, I got it. I just need you to fix everybody else. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Let me refer you to someone else, because I can't, if you're not willing to, I don't know. I've heard it said that you don't really have team problems. You have a leadership problem.
Mm.
And so that's where I start. So I start at the very beginning with the head. So starting with the CEO or the owner, once they acknowledge, yes, I need help. Okay, great. They usually have a good idea of where the choke points are or where the fires are. And so what I usually do is try to do triage right off the bat. Well, what's on fire, or what's the thing that's going to cause this to shut down tomorrow? Like, let's go figure out where those fires are. Let's go put those out. Once we get those fires put out, then we'll work on, okay, what are your key processes that we absolutely have to have documented? Like, where are they in this organization? Whether it's the delivery that they do or the intake or whatever that is, we'll find those key areas, and then I want to get those secured. And so, great example is I was working with a client that does lead generation process, and he's like, "Oh, we've got this outbound calling system. It's like perfect." I'm like, "Great, let's start there, just so I can show you what a documentation looks like, and we can get an easy win." How many steps is the process? 10. I'm like, really? Okay. So I go through and we start documenting it, and we're going step by step what the whole process takes. It was 35 steps.
Wow.
Not only was it 35 steps, it required 5 different people passing information back and forth between each other.
Wow.
I was like, okay, so this is your perfect, you guys got this nailed. Do you realize here's the level of complexity? You've got 5 people passing things back and forth. This takes a lot longer than you thought it did, and it takes more steps than you think it did. Now, if this is something that you've got nailed, now imagine all the stuff that you don't have figured out. How bad is that? He's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So what we did is we came up with a strong list of key processes we needed to get documented, and we started documenting those processes and getting those really structured. And the nice thing is, with the work that I do as a fractional COO, my job is not just there to coach you and rah, 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 you can do this. Like, here's the, go get 50 yards and good luck. Or as a consultant where it's like, hey, these are the steps you need to take. I'm going to check with you every week until you get it done. I'm actually gearing up and running through with them to try to get those yards that we said that we want to get. So
yeah,
when I document the process, I'm talking to the people, I'm talking to the key process people, I'm talking to people that are involved. And yes, one, I'm there to observe and document, but then I'm also there as I ask questions, people start realizing, oh, maybe I should fix this, or maybe I should fill out the document all the way, or maybe I should write this down, or maybe I should put this in the system. And so we tend to get system improvements as we're documenting them because people, all of a sudden, we put a spotlight on what's going on and we show the people what the inflow and the outflow of what they're doing and how that impacts other people. And then because we've talked to the people before and we've talked to people after them, they're like, oh man, I know this is coming. So then I better get my stuff in order. So,
yeah. So how did you, what did the end process look like? I mean, with like the example that you gave of like the outbound, lead generation, like direct calling, cold calling system, right? You said
yeah.
I mean, I can imagine like information has to pass through 5 different people. Like how did you simplify that? Did you cut the slack on that and make it to where fewer people had to touch information? Tell us kind of how you went in and cleaned house.
Yeah, so I actually I put a LinkedIn post on this, and I'll put this with you guys. I'll send this to you guys so you can put it maybe in the show notes or something. But so you look at the whole process and how that flows, and so then you have a few simple rules. So one is you want to make sure quality is done as at the earliest stages as possible. And so when you look at information being passed back and forth, and you're like, why is this going back and forth to these departments? Oh, well, they were checking the information and something was missing, and so then this department is responsible for filling it out. Well, when they first had the document, why didn't they take care of it 100% before they passed it over? Someone's like, oh, that's a good idea. Okay, so let's have 100% accuracy as early as possible, right? So then we can eliminate these back and forth like double checks and triple checks. So that was one. The other thing that we did was as we identify clear roles of what people were doing, I found out that there was one person that had both roles. And so then I was like, well, are these 2 different people? And does it need to be 2 separate roles? Or why is that person? And they're like, well, based on their job description, they're only supposed to be doing this. But then we added a second job description. And I was like, but if they're doing customer service, like, why don't we mush those together and then make the customer service person responsible for these things? And let's simplify this whole thing. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So then we were able to find efficiency there.
Yeah.
So the one example that I did post on LinkedIn was like, if you look at booking a meeting with a client, if you do it the old way where you're emailing back and forth and you're asking and you're trying to check calendars and everything else, basically takes several days and it takes a couple hours to book an appointment. But then if you use something like Calendly, right, all of a sudden you just take all the people component out of it. You use technology where it fits. I got it down to like, just a few minutes of somebody booking an appointment.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had another client that was a CEO of a $1 million interior design company, and she was doing all of the admin work. And I told her, you need an administrative assistant. And so when we documented the process, I built a lane for the EA, entering details into Basecamp, following up on colors, like all these little small tasks. And by the time we were done documenting all of that, I told her, I was like, now you're ready to hire EA. Let's look at these lanes for all these different processes we have. Now we have a job description. We know exactly what they need to do. And then when we calculated the hours, the owner got 20 hours of her life back by hiring a full-time EA. So then I was like, well, based on your $300 an hour bill rate, if you bill half these hours, right, then you're more than made up whatever you're paying for an EA. She's like, oh my gosh. And I think she only had to work like 1 or 2 hours to pay for the EA. So,
right.
It was really easy gain to show her. And
that's crazy, making $1 million and not having an admin. I'm just like, what?
Well, but see, this is the thing. It's like, it's like the frog that's boiling in the water, right? The degrees keep increasing and the frog doesn't realize because it's just kind of adjusting to whatever the new norm or chaos is.
Sure, yeah.
And so my job is to be like, hey, by the way, how's the temp?
To me, that kind of sounds like the idea of like, working in your business versus working on it. you know, where you said you're the frog boiling, like she's not working like on it, right? She's just so getting hit and bombarded with, you know, like we do as entrepreneurs, but like it sounds like you can come in from an outside perspective and you
Yeah.
can say, hey, we actually have to work on all of these things. And that's cool that you're building out a lot of those systems that aren't even like financial related, like as like only, you know what I mean? Obviously they impact the bottom line, but you know, getting into those processes and everything too. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and I use a really simple method. I use Lucid Chart, and then it's there's actually a book that I have that it's, I don't know, a lot of people don't even know or they don't really use it. It's a simple process mapping, and through that map, the other piece to that is by doing all the map, people get to see, and so then you have different people looking at it. Everyone can see where they're an input or an output for somebody else. And then the other thing, and this is why I love the exit planning part, is once we document these processes, you can actually go get those copyrighted. Now it becomes IP. So now you put it in your operations binder. So when you go for evaluation or you go to sell, you actually can show somebody, by the way, this is how the sausage is made.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So what's the clients that you work with? Tell us what's the biggest success story, I guess, that kind of highlights the impact of operational improvements that you've made for a client.
Um, okay. The biggest one, I think the biggest one was that CEO with the $1 million business. Because
Yeah.
when we figured out her hourly rate between her W-2 that she was taking and then her distributions, she was making $7 an hour based on the number of hours that she was working. I was like, you
Just
could
go
go,
work at McDonald's, lady.
yeah, you could go flip a burger and make more money and have less stress.
That's more money than I made my first couple of years of having a business.
Oh, you guys are jealous. Yeah, look at that.
$7.
Yeah. So I mean, that was a really good one. The project that we're finishing up right now is for a business broker, and he manages all of his workflow on an Excel document. That's like, it's like, I don't know, 100 miles deep and 10,000 miles wide. Like, and it's just this big complex. I mean, he
Wow.
knows how to work that sheet like nobody's business. But I was like, dude, you're doing things to Excel that even like, oh yeah, just, oh, it was crazy. So I was like, listen, man, like what we're gonna do is we're gonna get you on a project management system. So he's on Monday.com.
Mm-hmm.
We created we created a whole workflow system for him. Again, using my process mapping to figure out all the steps and stages. And then on his Monday.com, he has a viewpoint where you can see his project, where all the statuses are and everything in the stages that it's in. And then he's got a couple other call out like dashboards so you can quickly see. So now instead of having to scroll this monster, like, crazy sheet of, I don't know, like a general looking little army man running all over the place trying to manage all of that. He can look at one location in Monday.com. And then we set up workflow automation pieces. So his intake form, he used to like print off a piece of paper and then write out all of his notes. And then he would have to put it in a pile, and then he would like take a picture or he would email it to somebody else. They would type it up. They wouldn't know what it was. And so, I mean, just imagine that whole intake process, right? So he got it digital. So then now he fills out all the information. It goes right into money.com, sets up the project for him. And then it sets up a contract already, sets up the invoice already. And then all of the check-ins that he has, anything external that he can't control, we have email notifications going out to people to remind them like, hey, by the way, we're missing documentation, or hey, by the way, that invoice isn't paid. And so we created all these systems that basically now he can sit back and basically captain from a chair, and everything is running, and he can quickly see where the flow is for everything and then turn things on and off as he needs to. This guy worked on average, let's see, 8, 16, 24, about 24 hours, all weekend hours. That's how much time he would spend on weekends updating his Excel spreadsheet and trying to track all of the stuff that was going on. I got him all of those hours back. So 24 hours in a month, what, times 12 months, do the math on that. He got all that time back. Plus now, because this automated system is running, we've actually increased his capacity. So he can actually take on more clients now because everything's automated. So, he can work on even more deals and track even more things. And so just with the savings itself, though, the guy got his, like, long story short, he got his weekends back.
Yeah.
The plus is now he's got a system that he can scale and run, and we have it all documented. So then if he ever decided to leave the business, right, he's not a sales guy giving up his sales role. No, he's a guy that's got a machine that basically prints money.
Yeah.
And so now he can sell that, or he can license it, or I don't know, do whatever the heck he wants with it. So
Yeah. So the one part of it is the systems, the tools, the, you know, having everything set up from a technology standpoint and a tracking and, you know, having all of your, you know, your operations documented, all of that is obviously super critical. And any business owner should, if they're not doing that, should either start doing that or hire someone like you to come in and do that. Right. But then there's the other part of it for, you know, for businesses in your target range, right? $500,000 to $5 million. Like, they're going to have employees that have gotten used to doing it a certain way. People that have gotten, and they've kind of almost like developed their own little system when there's not a system, right? They've developed their own system for how their workflow goes. So how do you come in then and get everybody on the same page? Because there's the tech side of it, but then there's the human side of it, right? Getting everybody to actually follow these systems and use these tools.
Yeah. So welcome to process change and process development. And like, it's complex. And one of the early warnings that I had to give, and this is as I was developing my practice, I had to learn myself too, is, you know, the team that got you here is not the team that's going to get you there. And so when you bring me on board to help get this organized and structured, there is going to be some change that's going to happen. And there's going to be some, I want to say sacrifices. I mean, anytime you're going to change, you got to sacrifice usually the status quo. And so then it's up to the staff and the employees. One, we come in as like, okay, listen, everybody's frustrated because sales never gives everything 100% to customer service. You guys are frustrated. So like when we document all of this and get this structured, that's going to help everyone. They're all excited. The people that are like the knowledge keepers, or the people that don't want, people that are succeeding because of all the chaos, that first they're a little trepidatious about change because they're like, no, I'm doing just fine. You know, CEO never checks in with me because they're always so busy. So I could do whatever I want. And so, but I always try to approach it as like, listen, everyone's frustrated at some point with this job. So let's just get things documented and like, let's just be on the same page. That's an easy sell. A lot of people are like, yeah, sure. Come on in. I'm like, you don't know what you're invited when you said, come on in.
Yeah.
So then I start documenting things, and then this is where things get a little weird. And I'm not a people person. So like, I'm a process person. So when I say like, hey, you told me you're doing these 10 things, and based on your workflow and what we've checked in with you, it looks like you're doing 5 things. So where's the other 5 things? And then they're like, well, who the hell are you? And I'm like, well, you told me 10 things, remember? Like back here. So I'm just telling you what you told me. And they're like, oh, I guess I should do those 5 things, 5 additional things. Yeah, you probably should. Okay, great. Because I'm just here to document, right? I'm not here to like call anybody out or cause problems.
Yeah.
But when you start documenting things and then tracking those stuff, all of a sudden people start realizing, I don't know, man. Pretty much every larger company that I've worked with, when I say larger, like 1 million plus, they have a small team. Unfortunately, I think I'm like 8 for 8 on employees leaving, because I come in, I start documenting, and then the people that are causing problems or chaotic or live in that stress and are actually holding the business back, they tend to go look for another job because they're like, oh, I know you guys are getting more serious, and like, I don't want things to get more serious. And so they kind of step out. So that's great. In one of my engagements, we only had to fire 1 person because they dug on their heels and were like, I'm not changing, and I'm in a key position, and you guys can't replace me. And you better fear the reckoning if you get rid of me. And I was like, okay, well, we've got 70% of your job documented, and we already know the inputs and we already know the outputs we're looking for. So, you know, we talked to the CEO, and the CEO was like, you know what? This guy's holding me back. This is the new bottleneck, and he's not going to change. He's out. And so, when you're at 1 million in revenue, you've got to make some serious choices about what your growth trajectory is going to look like. And you can't afford to keep dead weight, and you can't afford to keep people that are basically holding your business back from growing.
Yeah.
How do you no, this is all super good. Lots of thoughts to process through after this. I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of listeners too, entrepreneurs, because $1 million is kind of, the business isn't large, but it's the time where it's like, okay, it's really important now to, like you said, small team, to start getting a lot of this stuff lined up. So that's super cool. What's your thought on balancing cash flow with, obviously as a, business, when you have a business, it's running out of money is always a constant potential, and so how do you balance that with like investing, like the short term with the long term? Because I think I'm just thinking about entrepreneurs, specifically that they want to grow the business. They want a lot of growth. They want to just put everything back in. A lot of them aren't taking a salary, things like that. What's your advice there with balancing the short term, kind of cash flow management with long-term growth?
Yeah, so there's trade-offs there. I mean, that's the first thing I tell people is like, listen, if we're doing short-term fixes, right? Then I mean, imagine it's feels a little hyperbolic, but imagine that your house is on fire. When the fire department comes in, right? They don't knock on the door, and then they don't try the lock, and then they don't unlock. They kick the door down, and then when they go to the fire, like they're dragging hose, and if they need a hole, they put a hole through the wall. And so all of the stuff they do is a short-term fix to fix the immediate need. And so there are real trade-offs when we do short-term fixes. And it could be like getting rid of an employee or documenting something or coming up with a very inefficient system that's not going to scale, but because we immediately need a solution to this. And so um, I tell owners when we start, like, by the way, here's some trade-offs. So we're going to have to figure out like what those look like for you. And with operations, you know, it it can slow it can slow a business down pretty significantly. So if you're like, hey man, we're crushing it, we're going to want to go go go, we want to keep the same pace, but meanwhile the chaos is piling up like crazy, we have to slow things down. So then we're going to have to tell them like, hey, listen, your growth trajectory shows that you're going to have double digit growth every quarter, but your team's falling apart, you're stressed out, like you can you're working 80 hours a week, fine, you can work 160 hours a week, but then you're going to have a heart attack and be dead, and there we go, we're done. So one, I try to position it as trade-offs. Two, I try to also position it as short-term solutions sometimes don't fit into long-term sustainability or put you on a trajectory of growth. It's about dealing with the immediate needs. Once we get out of the emergency situation and then we're ready for growth, then that's where I'm very, very, very conscientious about one, visibility. Like, how is this impacting our clients, and how's this impacting our customers? We want to make sure that everything we do operationally, that there's no flaws, so we don't lose clients. We're not bleeding those out. The second part then I focus on is sales. Hey, what the hell is sales doing? And are they actually crushing it? Are they sending us the right leads? Are they doing the right things? Or are we operationally burning them so bad they can't sell? How do we free them up so salespeople can sell, and then operations and fulfillment can do what they're supposed to do? So those are kind of the two ins and outs on that. And then on the cash side of things, I'd love to say like, well, I'm not a finance guy, so, I'm out. But I mean, money finances operations. And so that's our gas. And so I want to make sure we have enough gas to do what we're supposed to do. And so looking at the financials, ideally, if we're going to do operations work, we can understand what a slower sales cycle looks like, what a slower onboarding is going to look like, so we can keep those tires from spinning in the snow. We can slow it down to a point where we can get some elements built underneath it, so we can get enough traction to get up and out of this ditch. So does that kind of get there?
Yeah.
Or
No,
Okay.
it
That
absolutely
makes a lot of
does.
sense. I mean, slowing down to, yeah, I mean, you have to stop and slow down and build that better, all of those systems. Like, I mean, I'm doing something right now in this construction company that I own. It's where we have a guy who's following everyone around and meeting with them like 2-3 hours a week, and they're talking and he's writing it all down and everything. And it takes time, right?
Yep.
But it's what you said, but I think it'll be better. longer, long term, right? Because we're bringing another guy on here, probably January 1st. And so it's like, just getting those roles refined or defined, and then
Well,
refined.
and I think the key is, and this is where maybe the advice for anyone that wants to hire an operations person, if someone comes in and says, we got to stop everything we're doing, and then we need to work on stuff. I would be highly cautious of that. I mean, that is one approach, but a business is almost like a body in the sense that the heart's pumping and like things are flowing and you can't stop. So you can slow things down. And so like what I try to do is find ways to slide in there, right? And so take a little bit of time. And this is why I'm fractional too, because you could hire a full-time operations consultant, but they're going to eat up so much time of the CEO. They're going to eat up so much time of staff, and it's a huge expense and it's a huge time requirement. And so for myself, doing it on a fractional basis, I just do a few hours a week, right? And I just have a few conversations, and we make all these small little micro adjustments over time that stack. And so the next thing you know, it's like, when you're aiming for Pluto, is if you're a few degrees off, you're going to miss it completely. And so by making these small incremental changes, it sets us in the right position for long-term growth and success.
Yeah.
So.
That was a really good conversation, Joshua. I appreciate you sharing, your expertise. What, when business owners, are on that growth trajectory, what advice? I would imagine that, when a business owner finally gets to the point where they are like, I need Joshua Monge to come and help me fix problems, like they probably are months or years overdue in needing to address those issues because they've become so big that they don't know how to fix them themselves. They don't know how to do it. So what advice would you give a business owner right now who's maybe earlier on, or maybe things are running smoothly now? What should they be looking for? What advice would you give them in terms of when's it time to really start refining operational systems?
Okay. I think once you get proof of concept and product market fit and money's flowing, and then that's something that you're like, okay, great. I figured out the right recipe for these cookies or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're like, great, now document that. And then start practicing the discipline of being a business owner as early as possible. Because I think we talked about this offline for half a second. There is an exit. Like, I don't care who you are. You're going to die, or you're going to retire, or you're going to get divorced, or you're going to want to go live near your kids, or whatever it is. There's going to be some exit for you. And so if you start now in the early stages where you're getting started, if you can just practice that discipline of documenting your operations and making sure that you have clear job descriptions for everybody, that you understand these different facets of your business and how they run, and you've got that well documented, small improvements over time are compounding. And so just start now. Just start today. Like, imagine you got, I don't want to say hit by a bus. Like, I'm sorry, but I have to use, I guess, strong language a little bit. Imagine something happened to you where you weren't able to show up to work tomorrow. Is there a drawer that somebody can open up and start looking through the documentation and figuring out what they need to do and what they need to follow up on?
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
So
that's really good. No, I think it is helpful to think that way. I think of we interviewed a guy about a year ago on the show, and he tells this, this kind of thing of like, imagine an hourglass sitting on your shoulder, and knowing like constantly, like, this is the amount of time of life that you have left. What would you do right now differently in your business, in your life, and whatever, if you knew you only had 5 years to do this, to be here, to live, right? And then choosing, regardless of the uncertainty around, how much time do you have left, it's like, just live that life the way you would answer that question. Just live that way now. Because that's the life that you want to live. Build your business that way now. Yeah. And so for me, I think to give entrepreneurs a little bit of a vision for this and why this episode is so important, and then we'll jump real quickly into the exit round, because I want to get I want to get your 5 answers to these questions. But to give some entrepreneurs a vision, I just want to say, like, build your business in such a way that your business serves you. And that's why this is important. So that your business can, it's not that you ever have to quit. It's not that you ever have to stop running it. You can show up for work if you love working 80 hours a week on your business and you want to do that till you're 80, do it. Just don't pin yourself to the point where you're enslaved by the thing that you started with the desire to see freedom.
Yeah, because a lot of people start their entrepreneurship journey because they worked for somebody else and they're like, oh, I don't like the way the guy did this and I don't like the way this is running. And so I'm going to go do this on my own. But I think what they fail to realize, though, is that draw that you're getting and like, oh, this is really nice. And, that's the money that I'm getting. But at the back end of that, they're actually building value of this business that something happens to you. And all of a sudden someone's like, okay, that's cool. Like the $1 million person, you're making $7 an hour. But do you realize you have a $1.5 million business? And so if something happens now, we want $500,000 because something bad happened or whatever. And the person's like, wait, I'm making $7 an hour. What do you mean you want $500,000? And it's like, well, because based on the value of your business, that's what we want to be compensated for. Now, all of a sudden you're like, but I didn't realize I was doing that. Yes, there's a business behind you. So, and that's accumulating value. So pay attention to that.
Absolutely. Well, man, just the last, let's say 3 minutes of the show here, we always try to, get the answer to 5 questions from everybody who comes on the show. It's all around entrepreneurship, building passive income, building your exit, right? Owning your exit. And so we're going to jump into the exit round. Question number 1, Joshua, what is your all-time favorite business book?
So my favorite one for right now is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Love it.
What percentage of your current income would you say is fully passive?
I hated seeing this question. Right now it's about 5%, but next year I've got plans to get it up to 20%.
Awesome.
Cool.
What's one thing you wish you could do more of, but your business holds you back?
Be an absentee owner.
Yeah.
I have, and full disclosure, I have 2 businesses that I run. So I have one business that has a stronger capacity to get me there faster on that side of it. But with the fractional COO work, people like to see me show up and do the work. So,
If you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself about building a business?
Don't do it. I'm just kidding. No, I would say for myself, if I could go back, it would be I built a 6-figure business in 18 months by focusing on one product and service. And if I would have actually been a little more mindful, I could have built a little suite of services, kind of like a cord with many, a rope with like many cords. And so when the market shifted heavily, this was SEO business and SEO has changed significantly. I had to pivot. And so fortunately I had this other skill set that I was able to leverage. But if had SEO and website or one other component with it, I could have not have been hit as hard in my singular one focus that I had.
Gotcha,
it was advantage.
Diversified. It sounds like you're saying diversified businesses and not have them all of it coming through one business or one source, one product.
So what is your strategy for creating time freedom and financial freedom for yourself? And feel free to share 1 or 2 strategic tips.
Okay, I got 2. So 1, I time block like crazy. So I protect this time. I have all my client time, all the product production time. I've got that all blocked off. And then I'm very conscientious about my meetings, networking, all of that. It's very structured and very organized. And then the second thing is I understand the economic impact of the work that I do, and I'm able to demonstrate that for people. And so because people actually pay me the value that I'm asking, which is less than what I create for them, I'm able to only work, like 30, 40 hours a week and still try to build and grow my business.
That's awesome. All right. How do our listeners get in touch with Joshua Monge if they're interested in your services or just want to connect and learn more from you? How can they get a hold of you?
Sure. So the best way to get a hold of me is on think.Build.com. That's my website. I have a free 30-minute link down at the bottom. Like I'll talk to anyone that's interested in having a conversation. So no obligation. And then I'm going to add one more. I know I'm only supposed to have one, but I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm so easy to find. So if you Google me, you'll find me. But LinkedIn, I'm always there and I'm pretty active on it.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, Joshua, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been a great conversation. I definitely know that we've taken some nuggets of wisdom away from this conversation, and I'm sure all of our listeners have as well. So, hey, if you have enjoyed this episode of Own the Exit, go ahead and subscribe on YouTube and share it with a friend that you think that might be of value to, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Own the Exit.
Thanks, everyone.